Ladies and gentlemen, our video system is down. They ought to have it fixed. They tell me in just a couple of minutes, so we're going to start just a couple of minutes late. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll find a seat, we'll start the meeting in 1 minute. No, I don't either. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council for October 2nd, 2017 to order, please. Is Reverend Russ Witten with us? I don't see him. If not, we're going to stand and have a moment of silence, and please keep in your thoughts the folks in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mr. Marler, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, the first item of business is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes, additions, or a motion to approve as written?
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, please vote yes. We have a unanimous yes. We are going to move into an executive session. This session of the Destin City Council is hereby convened as noticed by the publication in newspaper of general circulation, the Destin Log, on Saturday, September 30th, 2017. Mr. Burns.
Pursuant to Section 286.011, subsection 8.4 statutes, at this time I'd like to request that we adjourn to an executive session so that I, the Attorney of Record for the City of Destin, and Kim Kopp, also co-counsel in the following two matters of City of Destin versus Brooke Andrew, 360 Waverly Circle LLC, Graham Hill and Kimberly Hill, case number 2017 CA-002297-F, and Gargillo versus City of Destin, case number 2017-CA-110, and so that we may receive the council's advice regarding the strategy to be used in potential settlement discussions. And the attendees will be all the council members present here tonight, plus myself, Ms. Kopp, and the city manager, and the court reporter. And I think we should adjourn at this time.
At this time, we will recess the public portion of tonight's meeting and convene the executive session. Would everyone please exit the room? I'm hoping this is going to take 20 minutes or less. Oh, no, we're going to go in another room. You all are welcome to stay right here. We're going to move.
We'll be back right after these minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll come to order, I'll reconvene the meeting. Councilmember Dixon, you want to lead us off?
Are you talking about with the motion, Mayor? Yes, and I really don't know what to call it here, but I would make a motion that we reject a settlement offer that was discussed in our October 2nd executive session. Is that good enough?
I believe so.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Mr. Burns, is that everything kosher?
Yeah, that's fine.
I have a motion, I have a second. Further discussion? If not, I call the vote. One moment, please.
Can you restate the motion again one more time?
Is to reject the settlement offer from the October 2nd executive session.
We have 4 yeses, 2 noes. The settlement officer is rejected. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 6th special city council meeting and the executive session together if there are no changes or comments?
Mayor, if you would please split those up for me.
Okay, we'll go with the September 6th special city council meeting first.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, any discussion, any changes? All those in favor, please vote yes. Unanimous yes. Do I have a motion to either to approve or recommended changes to the minutes of September 6, 2017 executive session? Have a motion to approve, second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion?
Mayor, I'm going to abstain from this vote. I have a conflict due to my father owning interest in a company that is subject to the lawsuit that was discussed in the executive session.
I also will abstain, Mayor. My
Okay.
wife works for the people that are part of this lawsuit.
Okay. We have any further comments or discussion? If not, I call the question, except for those 2 abstaining. Unanimous, yes. With 2 not voting. We don't have any proclamations or recognitions this evening. We'll skip to the public comments on agenda items that are not public hearings, with exclusion of item number 6, which of course is a public. We don't have a public number 6, I'm sorry. There's no number 6 tonight, so any member of the audience who wishes to comment before the final session, I'm going to kind of organize these by subject. We'll start with item 4C, short-term vacation rental. Mark Robertson, would you like to please come to the podium? State your name and address after you turn on the mic. The red light will light up, then give us your name and address.
Hi, sir.
Push button. And when you give your address, tell us if you're a resident of Destin.
Yes, my name is Mark Robertson. I'm a resident of Destin. My home address is 881 Kell Air Drive in Destin. This is the first time I've been at a meeting. My wife appeared 2 weeks ago to speak at the vacation rental And the next day, a code enforcement officer came regarding our bed and breakfast. I am speaking on behalf of the Airbnb host community, and I will be at the meeting in Tallahassee on vacation rental workshop with Senator Tom Lee on October 10th. What I would like to say is that our businesses, we've had a business license since October 15th, since October 9th, 2015. Both my wife and I are retired military, and we're both disabled veterans as well. It wasn't our intent to be out of regulations with city ordinance. We got a business license from Okaloosa County, and we thought we were fine. I guess I wanted to introduce myself to you, but also ask for an opportunity to bring us into compliance. What happened was I was diagnosed with heart failure on September 22nd, 2015. I'm like, I need to figure out a way to take care of my family. I fell upon Airbnb. So we got a business license the next month in October. Our first guest was in November 2015. I had a mitral valve repair on December 16, 2015, which they removed my heart from my chest like a car engine, stopped it, fixed it. I was on housebound convalescent leave with 100% disability. It's a service-connected heart condition. I'm still 91% disabled. I get a little winded sometimes speaking like this. We had all the license from the county. Your laws, I believe, changed on January 1st, 2016. We were already in business. Also, our lot at 881 Kel Air is unique in the sense that it's called a meets and bounds. It's a standalone meets and bounds property. It is not in the Kel Air Gardens subdivision. I think initially it was attached to Sugarloaf, and I'm getting a zoning history, but right now it's low density residential, but I believe it was something other than that. It was the last house built next to the subdivision. I spent 2 days studying the issue with your code enforcement officers from Donnie Reed and Stuart Campbell and William M. I'm forgetting his last name. They were all very helpful. And I guess I'm just asking for the time to come into compliance. We also did have a homestead. A homestead lady came out and inspected our property. We were fine. We have 2 driveways in our house. There's never a parking problem on the street. I have an 8-foot privacy fence. There's never a noise violation. We are always home. It's never an absentee landlord situation. So those kind of nuisance things. We've never had a complaint. We've had 110 guests, all with rave reviews. If you look at the property on satellite photos, it was a mess. It was overgrown. Trees were in the wires. It didn't have lawn. Bushes were covering the property. It's a very nice property, and it's only 1 bedroom of 400 square feet. So there's a private driveway, a private entrance with 1 bedroom. We only rent to couples or single individuals. And our business for the last 2 years has generated $20,000, this 1 room, in revenue, and with the tax benefits on that is about $41,000 last year from a tax benefit. My father died 3 years ago. I invested all my inheritance into this property, and I'm compromised. It creates a hardship situation for me to work.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Okay, thank you. And I just thank you for giving me this time. This is my retirement home. I'm an ambassador for Emerald Coast Funeral Home. I'm a member of Destiny Church. I've spoken for 3 years on the victim impact panels for drunk driving for MAD. And I usually speak after the vehicle homicide officer because I was an emergency room chaplain for 16 years. And so if you drive drunk in this community and make it off the road, I can raise awareness of what it's like to be in the hospital and have victims and stuff like that. So that's how I've been a part of your community. And again, I just would like some time and some guidance. I want to conform, and I believe it can be done easily. Thank you very much. Is there any questions for me?
I'd just like to thank you and your wife for your service to our country.
Okay. Well, bless you. Thank you.
For council, we were talking about, obviously, the short-term vacation rental, but this is a discussion about the short-term vacation rental, the creation of a task force, and not short-term rentals in general. So any further speakers, I'd like to hold to the item that, or to the direction of the item that is on the agenda. If you want to speak to unagended items, that'll be held at the end of the meeting. Jason Sprinkle? I'm sorry, am I mispronouncing that?
Sprinkle, yes, sir. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be before you. My name is Jason Sprinkle. My address is 437 Captain Circle, so I'm in Regatta Bay, and I feel like I'm part of the city of Destin, but I think technically I'm not if I understand the boundaries. So, I was before you guys 2 weeks ago when the topic of a vacation rental task force came up, and wanted to come back before you and talk a little bit about the progress that we've made. When we came back last time, we kind of introduced the idea of a real effort on the private side and a concerted effort to work with the public side to fix some of the things that everybody knows is wrong. We've made a lot of headway meeting on our side of the table and kind of coming to grips with the fact that there are legitimate problems that need to be solved, and have put our head and pencil to paper to try to figure out a way to solve that. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about in terms of a task force. So our idea that we think has some merit is really two pieces. The first piece is we created something called the Destin Vacation Rental Compliance Board, which is an entity that we made up. But the idea behind it is to do a couple of things. First of all, it's to get all like-minded people in the industry together and to do some serious, quick education on the current regulations that are in place, what rules we're following and what rules we aren't following. It's pretty clear when we get together and do a quick self-evaluation of the stuff that you guys already have on the books that we've got a lot of work to do very quickly with everything from registration to sign compliance. And when I was making the list of things I wanted to present, I'll be the first one to admit we found a couple of areas where we weren't in compliance. So I think we can make a lot of headway through really quick education and self-action. The second piece is to try to provide a service of awareness and availability. And what we've done on that end is we created a website called Destin VCRB, which is our VRCB, VacationRentalComplianceBoard.com. It's up there now. Everybody's welcome to look at it. And the idea is to be a single resource that has all the information about vacation rental compliance in Destin, what you need to do, where you need to sign up, what the rules are, what the rules aren't. Everything from noise to garbage to parking. And then we also plan to man, with y'all's approval, a 1-800 number that would be available 24/7. It would allow anybody in the community who's got any kind of concern in the middle of the night about a noise ordinance or in the middle of the morning about a parking problem.
Excuse me, could
Yes,
we
sir.
kind of direct this back to the creation of a task force rather
Yes, sir.
than what you're doing?
Yeah, so the entire purpose of this is to collect data and find out where the real problems are so that we can learn and work with the task force to fix those. So we've already pulled all the data from the city, from the sheriff, from the code enforcement, and we've started to analyze it and put it into a single database. Okay, so we can see how many parking problems, where they're occurring, which houses they're occurring, how many are on Holiday Isle, how many are on any other portion of the beach, so that we can figure out what's really wrong instead of guessing. And You can already see in the existing data that there's some clear problems, and you can see that there's a lot of talk about some problems that don't really exist or aren't showing up in the data. But we feel like if we can be available, answer the phone call, take some heat off of the Sheriff's Department and the code enforcement, both of who we've worked with over this last week to get their feedback on how this can be valuable for the task force, then when we sit down with the task force on both sides over the coming weeks, we have exact data on how many people have called about parking problems, noise problems, and were there solutions in place that could fix them? Or do we need to come back in front of the council as a task force and say, we need more enforcement on registering, we need higher fines, or we need stronger availability for parking, or there's not really a noise problem on Holiday Isle, there's a noise problem in Crystal Beach, and it seems to be concentrated around these areas, and then work with ourselves and you guys to put regulations in place that really address them, not broad sweeping ones that may miss the mark. But we know there's work to be done, and our goal is to provide an outlet where we can collect all that data so that the work we do fits the problems that exist. Questions?
Are you finished? Questions? Comments? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The rest of these deal with the noise ordinance. Item 5, Robert Beckton.
My props.
Hello, I am Robert Beckton, 171 Reddick Loop, Bruce, Florida, actually, but I work at 172 Harbor Boulevard. I am the owner of Beckton's Live Events, a concert production company, and I'm also entertainment director at Tailfins Ale House Oyster Bar on the Destin Harbor. I'm happy to come back to the Destin Council today to tell you that I have done my homework. Mr. Braden last time seemed a little bit upset that the meeting was this little progress being made by the businesses on the harbor coming together with a plan to resolve this issue. Well, this could be due to some of the merchants and residents not being able to articulate the problems and solutions due to a lack of understanding and experience on the subject. So today, with the help of Mr. Fuller from Tailfins and my production company business partner, J.C. Murphy from Emerald Coast Business Group, we would like to see if we can move this along. Okay. Since the last council meeting, which by the way was my first, we had to gather a lot of information and examine this information to get to the root of the complaints that were said to be entertainment related. So our primary focus was on audio being generated along the harbor with emphasis on Tailfins Ale House and AJ's, but also the good people of the Red Door and the Boathouse, because there's lots of fine people down there. And so if we're going to really work together. So now, this being audio related, to examine and debate audio, you must understand and know the characteristics of the subject, including sine waves, highs and low frequencies, traveling distances, directional patterns, off-axis, wind, and most important, decibels are for the purpose of measuring reference, not legality, but reference. There is no other way. If you go to an audiologist to have your hearing checked, the physician would use frequencies, decibels, and measured increments to make a precise determination on what your hearing state is, and there is no other way for him to do that. When trying to be precise, and if we truly want to get to the bottom of this, we cannot talk in general terms or vague descriptions, such as plainly audible. We have to be the facts, 100% facts. To get some of these facts, we're going to have to ask different variations of how. First, how is how much? And this is important. It is at the heart of your definition of plainly audible. How much? If a bank called you and said you're missing money from your account, you would immediately say, how much? This is serious, you're concerned, and you will not want to hear a vague description. You want a precise number. How much? Several residents have stated that they hear audio from land-based harbor businesses during the evening hours, in particular the West End establishments, AJ's, Harbor Walk. Naturally, as an audio technicians, our first question will be how much
We understand audio, and being the nerds that we are, we want a precise number to know exactly what these residents are hearing. This is important. If there is a problem having all these related, if there's a problem, having all this related information will help only aid in finding a solution. Remember, as a collective, we are here searching for a solution. We want the facts. So to get started, our team got a map of Holiday Isle, the harbor, and businesses along the harbor. Then using what limited information we had where the residents lived, the majority seemed to live Noriego Drive. Now we were ready to ask our next how. How far? Distance was very important. Nobody had any idea of distance involved here. Just once again, it was vague description. A resident would say, somewhere over there, I hear it over here. And if you ask somebody for directions and they tell you to go down and take a right, naturally, you're going to say, how far? Distance will have a major factor when we examine this issue. Sine waves, directional patterns, plus any other refracting play a huge role. Therefore, measurements had to be made, combining decibel levels and distances to determine decay of sine waves as well as directional patterns. The higher the frequency, the faster the decay. The lower the frequency, the slower the decay. Direction, position of speakers will also play a role of how far sine waves will travel. Our next step in helping with measurements, we used a high-quality GPS map-based golf app. This was really neat that we did this, to determine distances across the harbor to create accurate sample points. The primary base of these points was tail fins and AJs. We chose the sample points there because Thursday, September 28th, both establishments have live entertainment. Tail fins had the Velcro Pygmies, a really big rock band in concert, and AJ's had another great band, Splendid Chaos. And this is perfect for us to conduct samples with. I personally ran sound for the Velcro Pygmies. In addition, I purposely mixed that show a little bit louder than normal. I mixed it at 90 dBs. The majority of my shows are around 80 dBs.
Sir, your time is up.
Mayor, I wish to hear this out. He's done his research, and I think we deserve to let this research be heard because it will determine, to me, it will determine some of what we're discussing.
That's fine. Of course, the
Mayor, is this?
purpose tonight is to whether we're going to go into
Well,
something else.
we
on the
brought up
noise ordinance.
questions, and he came back with the answers, and I think we deserve to hear the whole
Not to
thing.
rewrite it. I'll ask council, I have a motion.
Mayor,
continue.
can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Tonight's meeting was not on the harbor district was taken out, am I right?
Right.
And so, you know, this is going to come up on another night. I hate you.
I'd be more than happy to.
I'm sorry.
Well-
But we're not, tonight's meeting is not dealing with the harbor. It's dealing with everything except for the harbor, the way I understood it. And
Unless
Tuffy, part
council-
of what he's talking about, though, it would reflect on everything else, too. I think he's using the harbor as an example, but it could also go for the residential area that we're going to be talking about. I think the guy's done his research, and Rodney brought up a question about us not having any solutions. This guy's the
I don't have a problem with the thing, but in scheduled presentations, you know, he could get more time, I think, but, you know, we did exclude, the
Councilman
last
Dixon,
meeting I was at.
You are correct. The special presentation section of the agenda would be, sir, if you give the city clerk, he'll give you 10 or 15, 20 minutes if you need it to do a full-scale presentation to the council. And that way you can give the materials to them ahead of time, too, and they'll become part of the public record.
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure what that means. I just got a phone call today and they said, be here at 6. And so.
If you have Ray right there, sitting right there, so he'll
Yeah,
be
but
able
it's
to
not,
help
the
you
harbor
out.
taken out.
Yes, sir. What we're asking is that you
It doesn't- well,
give the city
last
clerk
meeting we
your name and telephone number.
Mayor, I'll
We'll
second
be
that
in touch
motion.
with you, and you
Okay,
will
we have a-
actually be on the agenda for October 16th to present all your information. We'll ask for information in advance, and then you can give your entire presentation without interruption at the October 16th meeting.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, so speak to Ray, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mayor, we got a motion and a second on the floor.
Mayor, there's a second by Councilman Braden to the motion made by Councilman Marlar.
To continue discussion?
Yes,
Is that your second? To
Yes.
continue
Yes,
to allow him to continue?
Yes, sir.
Would you remove the clock and we'll take a vote? Any further discussion?
Mayor, I mean, I know he's done his research and he did a fine job up here in the 5 minutes that he had, but we're going to talk about this another night, and, you know, I would just assume that we deal with what we're dealing with tonight and save this for the next meeting, for the next meeting that it comes up.
Like I said, Tuffy, the only problem I have is that he's using the harbor as an example, but if we're going to be passing something that's also going to affect the neighborhoods like we're doing, it's the same model. The model doesn't change.
Sound waves across the water?
No, well, we have Indian Bayou, we have Joe's Bayou. What if there's a party on one side?
There
and
ain't
the
no
other side's
nightclubs there,
not
no
upset?
nightclubs there. I don't care.
I mean, that's all I'm asking. I mean, the man's done his research and, well, I'm not going to rescind my motion.
He
We'll
can
see where it goes.
present, you know, it's just not.
Should we ask him if he has a preference?
Mayor, there's a motion and a second on the floor. I'll call the question.
Okay. Let's see, the question's basically to overrule the mayor again and continue discussion for any set period of time? Was that?
Until he's finished with it.
Okay. I call for the vote.
So let him finish his presentation.
For as long as he wishes to speak. Five yes, one no.
Come back up.
I guess he'll just have to do it again the night it comes up.
I'll try to hurry. I'm going to hurry. I know everybody's pressed for time here. I'm sorry.
Do you want to speak tonight, or would you rather wait until we're actually discussing the harbor thing? I mean, obviously, it's up to you.
Whatever is better. If Mr. Marlar has concerns and he needs to hear me, I'm okay with that.
I think the vote has been taken, and
Yeah, my only
please
concern
take
is
the floor.
that it could be also detrimental to, although you're using the harbor as a model, that model could also be used in the residential area in certain areas, and you say you're a professional, and
Yes.
we haven't heard from anybody else that's professional. We just keep hearing back and forth what we can and can't do, so that's the reason I asked.
Mr. Beckett, you have it.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, as I was saying that to determine a few things, the factors was the higher the frequency, the faster the decay, the lower the frequency, the slower the decay, the direction, position of the speakers, as well will play a role in how far a sine wave will travel along the harbor. Our next step was in using the GPS Golf app to determine distances across the harbor and create accurate points. Like I said, our primary base was the points for Tail Fins and Ale House, and we chose those because of the concerts that we're having September 28th. And I personally mixed the show at 90 dBs, which is 10 dBs louder than I normally do. I chose 90 dBs because of Holiday Isle resident, Mr. Tadlock, who I enjoyed talking to very much last time because he's very knowledgeable on audio, and he suggested that I start working with 90 dBs in an effort to resolve this issue. Next, Mr. Fuller, my business partner, J.C. Murphy, and Jason, a pontoon boat captain, took a pontoon boat out into the harbor, and we made considerable measurements and distances around the harbor using a GPS distance app and audio measurements using a quality decibel meter. And these were predetermined sample points of the harbor based on distance of the harbor, geography of the harbor, and as well as locations of the residents who we knew were here from last time, writing down their addresses. The highest decibel levels that we found were 67 dBs at peak, 247 yards on axis off of our restaurant. Axis is straight ahead, okay? And the lowest level we found was 50 dBs and less at 1,080 yards off axis to our east, which was over towards Noriega Drive that these residents were on. And at 50 dBs and less, the average household, that's an average household or a quiet library. This is nothing significant of alarm, and we have to take a harder look at this. There's a band in my living room, and they are to blame. This unbiased information we collected is not supporting that. Remember, as I said in the beginning, if we're going to do this as a collective, we need to get the facts and after the facts and not vague descriptions. This is why we took distance measurements and audio measurements. This is why these tools exist, and this is the science that exists. This is for this exact situations. Denying or disregarding this kind of information is saying like the world is flat or we never landed on the moon. We cannot treat this knowledge, true knowledge of this subject as witchcraft. If you do, we'll be burning a lot of good working people at the stake. In closing, I want everybody here to be skeptical of the results and challenge everything that I've found. We are not scared. We're not afraid at all. This is science. It's a beautiful subject. I make a living doing something I really love. Plus, I encourage everybody to download a dB meter on your smartphone. These just cost you nothing. It's a free app. And it doesn't have to be accurate, but it's good enough so you have reference. And then we can start to communicate. Because the more you know, the more that we can speak the same language, the more that we can work together. And that's all we want to do. Thank you very much. And I have, I have all of our results right here. I would love to give each one of you. Please.
I have one question for you, Mayor.
Mr. Marler?
Okay, and as I said earlier, we understand you're using the harbor, and I'm looking at it as a model. The problem apparently that we have in the residential areas is we have certain residential areas on Holiday Isle and in Crystal Beach that are short-term rentals, or mega houses, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm after is the same data that you did with the harbor, you could actually apply some of that same data to what we're actually discussing tonight, which
Yes,
is
sir.
residential and short-term rentals.
Yes,
and all
sir.
that.
Anywhere in the world.
Okay, and that's my question.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yeah, my vote earlier was not a vote to stop you from speaking. I just wanted you to know that. I just know that tonight's meeting really is not having any reference to the Harbor District, and so you is going to have to repeat the same thing again. And so I was just trying to basically save you some words, but I'm glad to listen to you, and thank you for everything. Good job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brayden?
Thank you. Is it possible for you to get photos of your dB meter, your GPS, so I can see for
Yes, we
myself?
actually shot video, and we're going to do it again. We're going to continuously do this.
Thank you.
We should be able to do it all the time. It's not that big a deal.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
Bruce Kroll, also on item 5.
Good evening. I enjoyed that. It is scientific. However, I just filled out a blue card for clarification, because if we were just going to talk about the residences and not the harbor, then I don't have much to talk about. But were you going to talk about how we had the workshop last week and when we're going to come back and that? Because I guess I need to know that.
Yeah, what we're
Mayor, if I remember from the last meeting, you came up and spoke, and I believe what Tuffy's motion was that we were going to move forward with the plainly audible standard with and everywhere in Destin, with the exception of the South Harbor District.
Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago.
That was 2 weeks ago.
Right, and then last week?
And then we had our workshop, which I believe that is still what is going to be decided this evening. So the South Harbor District is still going to remain under the current noise ordinance should this pass tonight. So I don't know if there's a whole lot for discussion regarding the South Harbor District at this time.
Basically, there's also, council can do as they please. They could also amend tonight and vote on any of 3 or 4 or 5 different directions. But the primary purpose of this tonight is to talk about everything but the Harbor District.
Okay, I was clear up until you said we could still talk about it if we wanted to.
You saw these gentlemen just overrule me. They can change the agenda just as fast.
Okay, but I think that all of you agree that we're going to table this until after we give the results of the independent meetings that we're having, which is the results of a workshop, and coming back to you about the harbor, right?
Everything except the harbor tonight. Everything
Okay.
except
Mr.
the
Kroll,
harbor.
what do you mean by this, table of the harbor, right?
No, yes, the harbor
Okay.
part of it. Yes, right?
No, yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Shane Moody.
Shane Moody, President and CEO of the Destin Chamber, and excuse my voice. If South Harbor mixed use is exempt from this and utilities are exempt from this, I would just waive my time.
The utilities are not exactly exempt, but the exemptions were amended to meet the discussion we had 2 weeks ago at the meeting. Mr. Boss, Peter Boss.
Good evening, Peter Boss, 3889 Indian Trail. I could never give as detailed an accounting of science as we just heard tonight. It was great to hear that. But I do urge you all that the word audible is frightening in that I've watched towns, I've watched Clearwater, what happened, it went into an audible situation. The degree of who complains, if you hear someone playing a classical guitar 2 doors down, suddenly it becomes a problem. I want you all to draw an analogy if you realize that shoplifting is bad and you can stop it by closing the store, okay, and you won't have any more shoplifting. Look at the incidence of the problem, make sure we have someone there that may we hire that is a code enforcement officer that can call, so we're not calling the police because clearly they have more important things to do on the highway and with other issues and health and safety. But when you say just audible, that means all you have to do is just barely hear it, and if you don't like it, it becomes a problem. And I can tell you it ruined the reputation of the rental community in Clearwater. And if you ask restaurant owners in that area, because I bought a restaurant there, and it was closed for one reason, because they ended up having to air condition the entire place, and finally they were on the water. They ceased being on the water, and what they used to do is they literally had a dance band for the elderly. But because there was someone down the street that didn't like the big band sound or whatever it was, the restaurant closed, and every other restaurant in that town closed. It's now owned by the Scientology, owns almost the entire city. And I urge you that every time you use something as vague as audible, let's deal with the problem. Let's not try to throw the baby out with the bathwater or close the store to stop shoplifting. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Listening to the various comments on this, it came to mind that perhaps we're talking about the possibility of options in the determination of an infraction of the hearing. That common sense tells you that there, let's say, a person who deals with this specific thing all the time, a code enforcement person, for example, can tell the difference between noise that's abusive and noise that may be a little loud and may be remedied by warnings or some other common sense type thing. On the other hand, where you're getting into the business community, as we have learned here, you've got to be specific, you've got to be able to prove it, and you've got to be able to enforce it. And so we may be dealing with two different things here. I think we're coming to that conclusion, and that we've already said we're going to exempt the harbor in some fashion, but not totally. They're still going to have standards, and we're going to apply a different standard to the residential areas of the city. So as we get into this a little bit further, we may be talking about both.
Excuse me. Walton who? Wu? Excuse me.
Sounds good to me. Good evening. I'm Walter Wu, W-O-O. Don't confuse me with the other Dr. Wu. And I live at, Cindy and I live at 90 Sunfish Street. Nice, quiet communities, relatively looking for quiet and peace life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here in Destin. However, we have been invaded by these McMansions, 8 bedrooms, 8.5 bathrooms. And our house, maybe 1,200 square feet is a stretch. The house that's going up is 3,500 square feet. The houses down the street are huge. And the noise that you hear inside the house is different than what you hear on the street. And we know that our lot is 150 feet, so we fall right into that category of 150 foot. So the officer or whoever comes out to determine this, it's really, he may approve it, he may not approve it. But what he hears from the street is not what we hear in the house. And I'm for this noise ordinance. I don't want to hold passing this ordinance up. There are a couple of clarifications that I have. And one is under enforcement and penalty. And under the definition of under the definitions, law enforcement does not appear. And it says, if law enforcement enforces this article. Is that the same as what you have by city manager or city manager's designee? An investigating officer shall mean either a city Destin enforcement officer, so forth and so on, or sheriff's deputy. Is that any different than the law enforcement enforces this article? So the language
Yes,
appears
law enforcement would be the sheriff's department, and they would have the full authority of the
then under this
city and of the
definition,
city manager.
that excludes.
Currently, we do not have a code enforcement officer trained on a decibel, and they do not work weekends, they do not work nights. So the enforcement by the code department really is non-existent. Ms. Lejeune, you can correct me if you have the floor if I'm wrong. But as I understand it, if we do away with the sheriff's department enforcement on this, the ordinance will not be enforced. And as far as the decibel level, it can't be used in courts here anyway. So,
From what
did I answer your question? It would be the sheriff's department.
And
everywhere, if this was adopted as it's written tonight, it would be the sheriff's department everywhere except in the Harbor District.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be no enforcement in the Harbor District.
The definition of investigating officer back on page 3 includes an authorized Oklahoma County Sheriff's Deputy. So to answer your
Correct.
question, yes.
But what I'm referring to is that only a sheriff's deputy under enforcement can enforce this. Because it says the city manager, designate the investigating officer, or other authorized code enforcement in the
Well,
definition.
only sheriff's deputies can enforce a criminal penalty against somebody. Code enforcement can't go out there and arrest somebody. So it would have to be a deputy to do that.
Okay. So we're going to be tying up the sheriff's department if we have a complaint. And if 5 properties complain, is that going to be one complaint or is that going to entail different ones? Because on the house that you have with the noise, if it's reverberating to the 2 houses behind it and then 3 more complain, and they're within, that's beyond that 150, they're in the 150-foot rule because the property in Crystal Beach is only 150 long.
As far as recording of the complaints, that'll be up to the sheriff's department, but I believe they record every complaint that's phoned into them. Would you like to comment on that, Captain Nix?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Every call that comes into the sheriff's office is recorded.
Okay. One other question. It says you included under holidays Easter. My suggestion would be any city holiday or federal holiday. I don't think Easter has really been designated an official holiday yet. The others are. But if you're going to have a holiday designation, go ahead and either have the federal holiday or the ones that the city follows. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments? That is the last card I have. We'll move on to,
Wait, one more.
Guy Tadlock. Mr. Tadlock, you are a resident of Destin, right?
Honorable Mayor and councilors, I really had not intended to make any comments tonight, but I would like to make just a couple. First of all, I'd like to say I too enjoyed talking to Robert Eckler, a very bright young man, and I think some of the stuff that he talked about tonight relative to measuring noise and trying to put a number on it is very valid. I worked in that industry for a number of years. A company that I worked for invented magnetic tape. This company was probably provided more magnetic tapes for albums that went gold than probably any other company in the world. I worked side by side with a guy by the name of Dale Dobie. So I've got a little bit of a background in this, but not to labor that. I'd like to go back to a comment that was made earlier. Nobody is trying to shut it down. We're just asking to turn it down. And somehow or another, we keep forgetting that. A couple of years ago, I sat in a popular place on the harbor with my sound meter, very similar to what Mr. Eckler's got, and I measured 110 and 150 dB in that establishment. People were leaving because it was too loud to bear. Now, on that same band, that night on my front porch, I was hitting between 85 and 90 decibels. But some of the things that Robert talked about is certainly applicable. On the harbor, these fixed areas where they've got stages, there are scientific things that you can do to lessen the amount of impact that music has across the harbor. They can position the band. They can use horns, directors, and they can use acoustical devices on the ceiling. They can do things to attenuate the noise so that it's not the music, let me correct that, so that it's not as great of an impact in the residential area. But guess what? In the residential area, there's nothing the same. Every weekend, there's a different band. I mean, one guy comes up with a boom box, a stereo system on the back of the boat that pumps out 500 watts, and the next week somebody's got a Bose speaker. So it's different every time and where they place it. Is it by the pool? Is it up on a deck? Is it on a boathouse? On Holiday Isle, we've got a house that's got a 2,000 square foot deck that's at the top of the house at 40 feet. Let me tell you what, you can hear a needle drop up there. I mean, there's houses all the way around that. And you can hear everything that goes on. So you can't take this scientific data that was established, this one point, and say that that's going to fix Holiday Isle. It's not. The noise ordinance as it's written right now will give us a lot of relief in the residential areas. I really encourage you. I think the right thing was done relative to taking out the Harbor District and seeing what can be done with those establishments working with us. But the meeting that we had, the workshop, it didn't sound like a whole lot of give and take there. It's like, we are what we are. Don't mess with us. But I'd like to see them come forth, work with some of the people that's across the harbor, work on those stages, work on some acoustical devices, and turn this stuff down. It doesn't have to be that loud to enjoy it. I'm telling you that. So I think you got a good ordinance for the residential part. First reading tonight, I really encourage you to pass it. And I just want to briefly make a comment on short-term rentals that the last time we talked, I mentioned to you that on Holiday Isle there were 49 properties that were short-term rentals, and I'm talking about in the single-family residential area, 49 properties. At the time, I didn't know exactly how many was registered with the city. Went in and checked, and there's 31. of those, I'm sorry, there's 31 that's not registered out of that 49. Now, these folks have been renting these rental management companies. Some of them actually bought the license the first year or registered the first year, but then when it went up, they didn't go back the second year. So that's this year current. Of the 49, we got 31 that's registered. And I want to tell you that that the rental management companies, that is a very profitable business. I can tell you that right now. I mean, they wouldn't have come here the night before. I mean, they waited to the last meeting. They wouldn't have come here tonight if it wasn't big money. But when you sit there and you can rent and get 25 to 30% commission on that rental. You provide the cleanup. You provide the rental for any amenities, motor scooters, bicycles, all of that. The lawnscaping and any maintenance. It's big business. So they don't want rules. They don't want occupancy limits. I think they're willing to sit here and tell you anything, but at the end of the day, unless we pass something and do something, the exodus of the permanent residents of this city is going to be historical because people can't tolerate it anymore. I just talked to a gentleman from Crystal Beach. He's had enough. Talked to a guy today on Holiday Isle. He's had enough. And we're not asking anybody to shut it down. Just be considerate. Be a good neighbor. That's all it is. Quit counting the money and be kind to your next door neighbor. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Tadlock, being a sound expert, you suppose when you're laying in bed at night and you can't sleep for the music coming through your walls, that maybe a decimeter doesn't really mean anything?
I'm sorry, sir. Say again.
I said, if you're laying in bed at night trying to go to sleep and you're hearing music come through the walls, does a decibel meter really mean anything?
You know, to Mr. Eckler's point, there are some very correct scientific measurements that can be made and make predictions on noise. But houses are different. I can tell you that my house is an older house, but it's got thermopane windows. And the thing that saves me from the noise as much as anything is I suffer from a pretty serious hearing loss, as I just demonstrated. And but it drives my wife batty. But to our point, and I don't mind telling you, Mr. Laird that was in here before, when he was at Gilligan's, I worked hand in hand with him, and he made some improvements. Charles Morgan at Harbor Docks, they used to be side by side. Charles Morgan went in and made some improvements. They added a barrier in between the bandstand, and they did things to really make a difference. And I think that Mr. Eckler right here can work with them, and they can lessen some of the problems that are in the harbor right now. But in the residential areas, he ain't going to be out there every weekend, and we're going to have a different boat with a different sound system or a different boom box or a different noise maker. We had a guy out there one time that was a Mississippi State person that had a cowbell that rang it the whole time.
Jennifer Green? Oh, we got the timer on. I can't see any of the lights. I'm sorry, you'll have to wave at me. Did you want to ask Mr. Tadlock a question for us? We'll move on. Go ahead. You can stay right there. Mr. Tadlock, would you?
Well, it's something Mr. Tadlock brought up. He had mentioned that I guess there were 49 properties that are short-term rentals in Holiday Isle, and 31 of those are not registered. And then there was the comment that maybe some of them had been registered previously, but when we raised the registration fee, they stopped registering. Are we not tracking that?
As a matter of fact, on a daily basis, my new code enforcement manager is bringing me an update of how many of these registrations that they're doing. They are actively researching and pursuing, and I'm sure very shortly the ones that have not yet registered will be registered. We are noticing the people who we are finding, and I don't have the dollar amount in my head, but we have definitely gotten over, I'm trying to remember what it was that he told me this morning, but thousands upon thousands of dollars that we have accumulated over the last 3 weeks that the code enforcement manager and our new code enforcement officers have been on the streets and getting these folks to register. So I don't disagree with Mr. Tadlock's numbers, but I can guarantee you that those numbers are decreasing on a daily basis, and we're registering more of the businesses every day.
Okay, that's good to hear. Are y'all going back and looking at ones that had been registered prior to the increase? And
That's how they're finding a lot
Okay.
of them, is that they're going back into the logs to see who had previously registered and who is still doing business but has not registered this year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon?
My numbers are about 2 weeks old. We sent letters out to 31, and we might have had a couple of four people that
Mr. Tadlock, come up to the mic and repeat what you just said so it's on the record.
I'm sorry, sir, what did you say?
You don't have a noise problem. Please repeat what you just said on the record.
Okay. The numbers that I mentioned, there were 49 short-term rentals, and that as of this date, which was roughly 2 weeks ago, there were 31 that were not registered. And we sent out letters to those, and Mr. Shelton just said that he thought that 4 additional ones had registered. So we'll remove 4 from that and say that
In addition, you
27
reported all those to the city. I believe they're working on those. Is that correct?
I think we did, yes.
Councilmember Dixon?
I hope, and I brought this up about, I don't know, a year ago. I hope we got a system to where we can turn this information over to the tax collector's office. And the reason that we need to turn this information over to the tax collector's office is because that obviously the people, well, not obviously, probably the people that are not registering are not paying into the bed tax. And the tax collector was told to me, will go back 3 years and collect the bed taxes what they were supposed to have paid for over the last 3 or 5 years. And so, you know, that's only fair. If they're going to do business like that, they ought to pay just like everybody else has to pay. And I think we have to have a system to notify the tax collector's office that we found this issue, and they need to make sure that they keep it in their files. So.
Yes,
May be
sir.
incorrect, but I think the tax collector no longer is doing the bed tax. I think they gave it to Department
Okay,
of Revenue in Tallahassee.
whoever it is that basically can go back and make them pay just like everybody else has to pay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We have a lot of new processes that are currently in the works, and our new code enforcement manager is working very closely with Mr. Webb Warren, who is working on the systems part of it. There's a lot of things that we are going to be tracking and reporting based upon the experience that the new code enforcement manager brings to the city with him. And we are right now in the process of a lot of internal changes that I believe will address what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Ma'am, are we levying fines at this point? I know you talked about there were thousands and thousands, but are we actually levying those fines?
Let me get you the report that was provided to me by Mr. Mahone, our code enforcement manager, because all of that information is in the report. So let me go ahead and provide that information to the council. I'll get that tomorrow and send that out to you by email.
Thank you.
Mrs. Green, and I think I'm mispronouncing that. I'm having trouble reading the last. Green?
Green like the color. Thank you,
Yep.
sir. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I don't live in Destin, but boy, I wish I did. One of the most beautiful places in the Panhandle. But I wanted to just take a couple seconds to tell you I'm here on behalf of Home Away. It's a short-term rental advertising platform, one of a lot that you all see over here, including VRBO and others. And I wanted to thank publicly your city manager, Ms. Lejeune, has been wonderful to deal with in terms of getting information. She's had a very open door. We want to be a resource. I know that might not sound like that's the case in other areas of the state, but I have to tell you, the company that we represent loves this area and has a lot of owners that are your neighbors that utilize this advertising platform, and they want to be good neighbors. They want to do the right thing. And so as you put your task force together, we would like to be present, helpful. I'll come over from Tallahassee anytime possible. We'll have anyone from the company here. We'll do whatever we can. And as the commitment we've made to Ms. Lejeune is, if you have problems, get us those addresses. If it's on this advertising platform, we certainly will contact the owner or the property manager to try to resolve a solution. We don't want to be a problem in this area, and certainly want to be helpful to you. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we'll be available. We've been to the last few meetings of yours and have watched a lot online, but anytime I can head my way over to Destin, we certainly do that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
That is the last card. We'll move to city manager's reports. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. Item 4A, which is Resolution 17-52, is the contract with the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office for October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018. The proposed agreement total is $1,975,080. This is for the level of service that we had last year, including the Marine unit that patrols the harbor, bayous, and waterways. This is the same document and agreement that the council was presented with during our budget workshop. The amount for the agreement was approved by council in our fiscal year 2018 budget. And if you have any questions, we will be happy to answer those for you.
Mayor,
Excuse me, go ahead.
I'll be happy to make the recommended motion.
Okay, go ahead, please, sir.
Okay. I move that the council adopt Resolution 17-52, accepting the fiscal year 2018 law enforcement service agreement to provide law enforcement services to the city of Destin by the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office from October the 1st, 2017 to September 31st, 2018.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Further discussion? Comment? Councilmember Dixon. If there's no comment, I call for the vote.
Good job, Sheriff's Office. Very good job. Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon? Unanimous, yes. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. This next item, item 4B, Resolution 17-21, we are asking for the extension of the term of the Equity Study Commission. Back in April of this year, the council had put in place a Equity Study Commission for the purpose to bring forth recommendations to this council regarding the classification system and rate structure for business taxes. We have an incredible group of business owners that were appointed by council. It's a very diverse group. It's been such a pleasure working with these business owners. They're very knowledgeable, very eager to rise to the task, and we are ready at our next meeting to start vetting through their recommendations. However, we have run out of time. There was a delay for appointing all of the members, so we're just asking for an extension to the end of the year so that we can go ahead and complete the work that this Equity Study Commission is doing, and then we can bring those recommendations forward to council after the first of the year.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion. I have a second. Councilmember Braden?
Do we not need to read that resolution?
No, we don't need to read the resolutions.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion, questions, comments? Not, I call the vote. Unanimous, yes. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. At the September 18th City Council meeting, several of our short-term rental business and property owners came forward to ask about the possible future legislation by the council and to offer suggestions for mitigating concerns that the community has with the short-term rental homes within the city. And we've heard numerous other responsible property owners who have come forward again this evening who have already started doing some of the work of a task force. I was asked to bring back a format which would facilitate these stakeholder discussions in order to properly bring back the recommendations to council. I have two viable options that we have researched. One is based upon our ordinances and our charter, create a temporary advisory committee. This is under Article 2, committee, boards, panels, and commissions generally. The council has the authority to establish a temporary advisory committee, and the council would be responsible for establishing the public purpose, to determine the goals and objectives, to establish a sunset, and any other requirements that the council deems fit. We would then be able to take that information, post an advertisement asking for interested parties to apply, and then at a future meeting, the council could then appoint those members that they want to this advisory council, and then we would go forward. The other option would be to allow myself to facilitate a temporary stakeholder task force. The way that would work is that the first meeting would be publicized for all interested parties to attend, and then again, based upon the council's direction as to goals, objectives, sunset, and membership, then those people at the first meeting could sign up to be a part of the overall stakeholder committee. We would discuss the challenges as are brought forth by citizens and the council, and then look for mitigation solutions to bring back again as a recommendation. A third would be an alternate that the council could come up with, whether a hybrid of the two or based upon the conversation that Mr. Sprinkle had this evening, piggyback off of what they've already done themselves, bringing together the business owners and then working with those business owners to bring back the recommendations. I would volunteer myself to be facilitator for any format that the council would like to see going forward with a advisory or stakeholder committee, and I'm answer any questions you may have.
Questions, discussions? How long do you think this process will take?
The council can determine that by the sunset that they would establish for a date that they want to see recommendations coming back. One thing that I do want to add is that we do have the Land Development Code revisions that came out of the workshop the council had on comp plan. We, as staff, are ready to bring those Land Development Code revisions to the LPA for review and then ultimately to the council. Within the body of those LDC revisions is language that would affect the short-term rentals in the city. So the council should also take into consideration at this point how they would like staff to handle that. Would you like us to wait on the bulk of the Land Development Code revisions and not bring it to LPA yet? Would you like us to bring the revisions to LPA minus the short-term rental language? Would you like it to go in its entirety, understanding that when it comes before council, you can at then time pull out the short-term rental language if you so wish? So that's a consideration also as we go forward with the stakeholder task force or advisory committee, that we do have the land development code revisions hanging out there waiting to go to LPA at the direction of the council.
Councilmember Marler.
My question is either option. Under our current committee situation, they have to be residents of the city. Can we as the council can change that because of the complexity of the people that need to be involved?
For a temporary advisory committee as regulated under our charter and our codes, they have to be residents. If you wish for non-residents to participate, I would suggest the more informal stakeholder committee, and then the council can direct as to what they feel the membership should be.
Okay, that's option 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Do we need a motion on this? I guess we do.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Do we have anyone that wishes to make a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mayor.
Okay.
I move for the city manager. Microphone on. I move for the city manager to take the necessary actions in order to form a stakeholder task force committee. That's the motion.
I'll second it.
Well, if it's a stakeholder, then it can be determined by us. Not non-resident and resident.
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
Okay.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any further discussion? If not, excuse me, Councilmember Ramsman.
So here are my thoughts, and I'm sort of thinking out loud because I want you guys to understand my thoughts. Our goal here is to try to make things work between the residents and the renters. And right now what we're hearing from are the residents who are concerned. Lots of us are residents, obviously all of us up here are residents. I think it's important that this committee is residents. I personally think that should be one of the #1 criteria, is that you are a resident here so that you're seeing what's going on firsthand, you're experiencing it. I don't know if anyone else up here feels the same way, but I think that's a really important aspect of this committee, is really getting a feel for what's going on here every single day, and to do that, you live here. That's it for now.
Mr. Marler, would you accept that as an amendment to your motion? Oh, the foreman's motion, excuse me.
Okay, Mayor, the motion included both residents and non-residents. And I think the reason why you have to do that in the case of stakeholders is many of the people who have are involved in the management and the overall operation of the task force would be non-residents. So without that provision, you probably don't have a task force.
I would offer the compromise that if we're going to have 7 seats, I'm imagining we're going to have 7. Is that sort of each council member gets one selection? 7 seats?
And, well, the difference is with this task force, since y'all picked option 2, y'all can vary that typical framework and each have 2 if y'all wanted. So y'all could have 7 residents, 7 non-residents, or y'all have a lot of flexibility tonight to kind of set the parameters of what the task force would be.
Well, my suggestion
So
would
we
be...
can go ahead and vote on this and then discuss the makeup of the committee as a separate motion.
It might be easier to do it that way, or it might be easier to put it all in one motion. That's up to y'all.
I'm going to speak to Jim and to Preble. I think the compromise is if we have 7, put 4 residents, 3 non-residents.
If the makeup of the community is much different than that, though, do you want it to reflect the community, or?
Well, that's why I put 4 residents.
I don't think
If they can
40%
all
of the
get-
community's rental houses.
What's that?
I don't think 40% of the community's rentals.
No, I'm putting 40, I would prefer that 4 out of, the majority out of the members of the council be residents
Okay.
rather than having to be outvoted on 3 to 4 votes, but it be in the favor of non-residents. I don't think that's fair. But it is a compromise to the need of having only residents or allowing non-residents, which we do need to have their opinions shown on the stakeholder council.
Would a point of clarification be 4 have to be residents and then 3 have the option of being non-residents? So if all 3 council members want to pick residents, they could be that way? Is that correct? Okay.
But that would come following the approval of the task force. Then you discuss the makeup of
Well,
it.
you could do it all at the same time if we're in agreement.
It wasn't part of the motion.
I'm asking you if you wanted to do that. I guess not.
I'd rather not get into the details of the makeup until after we've got a task force.
We don't have a task force till we got to make it.
Councilmember Ramswell?
Yes? No, I spoke already.
Yeah, you know, I would say that each council member could choose a resident and basically you know, a business owner or you know, but I would certainly like to see the majority of the people that make this up being residents, but I do know that we have people that have put a lot of money and a lot of time into their businesses that are their businesses that own property here that may not be actual residents. So they do own property here in the majority of the cases, and you know, so I certainly would want to see the majority of the people made up of residents, but I do not want to exclude the people that do run businesses and the basically stakeholders in this thing. So I do not want to exclude. Another thing, just because they are named as part of the task force doesn't mean that the other people that are concerned can't come and express their opinions and their feelings in these meetings, because they can. The only people that would be basically coming to talk to, I guess, the council or to the city manager would be the people that are on the task force, but everybody is always invited to any meetings that we have.
As just a point of order, because the task force would be making recommendations to the council, it has to be in the sunshine. So the meetings would all be open to the public.
I see no one else requesting to speak. I call for the vote. Five yes, 1 no. Passes.
Do you want to go ahead and set the makeup now at this point?
Can we just,
Pleasure of council.
I'd rather have the staff come back with, like, I guess it's going to have to be a form, and they're going to have to, an application that will have to be advertised, and then they come in, so.
Well,
what
I
does-
think
what does
also-
our city manager think?
We want to include the city manager as being the moderator or focal point in this, so somewhere in the makeup of it, you would need to do that.
For clarification by council, do you mean council members only, or is the mayor included in appointing one?
Mayor too.
Yes. Well, be 8 plus city manager. I doubt it.
So we didn't have an even split?
Yeah.
Make the mayor choose two.
I'm worried that if we make it an even council, nothing against your own pick, but I would be encouraged to have an odd-numbered council, because I can see these being contentious issues that would probably need tie-breaking votes. And if you have an even number, you're just going to get gridlock.
Mayor, I have a question. So is it the will of the council that we go ahead and put together a application and then have the council appoint members? Or would you prefer that, would you prefer that I work with the task force that's already established and set a meeting to allow people to come forward who want to be part of that as well? Or do you want me to just start from scratch, have an open meeting, invite people to come, and then see who is interested in actually rolling up their sleeves at the table and having regular meetings?
What task force is already formed?
Sir?
What task force are you talking about that's already formed?
The one that Mr. Sprinkle had related to earlier in his meeting. He's,
Oh, okay, all right, that's their group. We want to make sure we get our group.
okay.
Yeah.
So then I can start from scratch and,
Absolutely. They can talk, they can meet and talk and do what they, and they can bring their ideas to this group, but that's their group,
Okay.
So we want to make sure, I want to make sure that citizens are involved in this.
okay.
So.
Does the council want to make appointments then and we'll bring back an application?
I would suggest that, put it out, see who's interested, and let's see what we got.
Okay.
Do we not need to go ahead and make the motion of the composition before we do that?
I think that'd be a good idea, just to set the percentages or the minimum amount of residents that you want on the board, and then that way they can figure out who's going to be on it later on.
So
I'll make the motion if you'd like.
go ahead.
I'm going to move that the board be made of 7 members appointed by each council member. 4 of them shall be residents, and the other 3 may be a resident or non-resident.
Second.
Question?
You have a motion, and second.
Business owner.
Question?
Yes, sir. When you say residents, would these be business owners who are residents?
There you
And-
go.
I assume by
There
residents, you
you
mean
go.
their primary residence where
That's
they
right.
live would have to be in the city limits.
Okay, so we're talking about residents who don't necessarily own or operate a short-term rental? Or is the assumption that these residents own and operate short-term rentals?
That's up to the council member who appoints them, I think.
That's right, that would be, I wouldn't put that caveat on it.
Okay, I wanted to be clear. So when you're appointing, if this motion passes and you appoint 4 residents and 3 persons who may or may not be residents, it'll be up to each individual council member whether they want this resident to be a resident or a business owner who is a resident or may not be a resident. Okay.
We'll call, if there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote.
Mayor, I have a question.
Okay.
Do we need to, is this the time, the motion, we need to put the sunset date on this task force? I'm getting a yes from the city
Yeah,
manager.
could do that.
I'd be happy to amend it. I'll amend it. I'm going to lean on legal counsel.
December.
Sunset provision, 12 months.
12
You're going to
months?
hold up the,
I was thinking December 31st.
Yeah, me too.
They could drag this out forever. Short-term rental.
From now, I mean, we adopted it this evening. And here's the thing, I mean, after we're done with this discussion, we really have to dig into the next issue, which is what are we going to do about the occupancy rate? The question is, have we formed this task force in lieu of adopting the occupancy rate? Is this, that train is still moving forward? So we're going to have that discussion in a moment as well. So I'm not as hung up on the 12 months. I'm thinking we need to get as much information as we possibly can from our task force, from the private groups, but I wouldn't want to hold up the large portion of the land development code changes that we have proposed. So that's in a moment. I think we're going to have to discuss what we're going to do about that.
You know, if we put this 12 months, this is going on past the next election
And the next summer season.
and the next summer season. I mean, I don't know what it would take, honestly, take 12 months to do, but.
Well, you
they
could
don't have it
put a
done in
separate
90 days.
restriction on them to finish the task. If you mean by the deadline that they have, then set a shorter deadline. But the sunset would just be the end of the committee, you know, if they succeed or they don't succeed. So the year was just to kind of give a broad range, but if you want to give them a shorter deadline, then I would recommend that.
Excuse me. Councilmember Braden, you do have the floor, and it was your deal. You could set a date on that, and we can either adopt or reject.
Yeah, I would,
No, he's asked for the amendment. You reject it.
I don't mind the 12-month sunset on the task force itself, but I want an answer. I want something brought back to the council by February 1st.
Would you accept that? Is it February 1st?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
the motion includes the sunsetting as of February 1st.
No, no, no,
2018.
no. The sunset's 12 months, but he's looking for forward motion on bringing forward solutions, information, how we can actually get our arms around what is a very large problem facing this council, which is the diaspora of a lot of our long-term residents, because, and I've had this conversation with a lot of these short-term owners, even the most well-behaved short-term rental folks behave differently than, you know, the husband and wife and the nuclear family that's got work the next day. They're on vacation, they're louder, they have more trash, they do things differently that impact from a nuisance standpoint. And as long as we can mitigate that to a point where everybody's not just running for the hills wanting to go somewhere else from our long-term residents leaving, then we need to find that balance. But, you know, stretching this out for 12 months is not my goal, and I agree with Mr. Braden's feelings on this. And by February, we need to be figuring some of these things out, because we've got some solutions that we've got to get implemented. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, can you?
Yeah, I'll try to articulate it as best I can. So the motion was to have a seven-member task force made up of 4 residents, and the other 3 may be residents or may be non-residents. We have a sunset provision on the stakeholder committee of 12 months from this date. And I believe that was about it. Yeah, date of completion, February 1st.
We have a motion, we have a second. I've already called for the vote, so it's up, but hang on one second before you do it. No further discussion?
Come on. Jim knew what he wanted to do.
Vote. Unanimous, yes. Ms. Lejeune, you still have the floor.
Yes, sir. As part of the approved fiscal year 2018 budget, I am recommending that the city, sorry? Oh.
I'm sorry, did I miss the part about the LDC decision?
My feeling currently, Mayor, is that it's been brought forward that the current proposal on the occupancy rates is going to detrimentally affect a lot of folks that are running good businesses in some of these neighborhoods. These guys that are coming to these meetings, these guys that are proposing solutions, they're not really the problem. So I'll throw it out there to council. We've put a February deadline of trying to get our arms around this issue. So perhaps we should hold in abeyance the occupancy rate portion of the land development code that is being moved forward on until we can see how much progress we've made by February, and then we can move upon it at that point. And I'll throw that to the council for just their thoughts and discussion.
Councilmember Ramsell.
And what would you say that we do with the short-term rental occupancy rate in the meantime?
Leave it alone.
Okay. Am I missing something? Is this on the agenda?
It was part of the discussion for the task force. It was something that I needed to bring to the council's attention, and the reason that we are asking for a decision is because I had scheduled the Land Development Code revisions to come to the LPA this month, because I know that the council wanted me to move forward the comp plan revisions and the LDC revisions as quickly as possible. Staff has done the review, we've written the ordinances, it's ready to come before LPA. We need to know if it's to go to LPA in October, and if so, in what form. If you don't want it to go into LPA in October, then we don't have to have this discussion tonight. I can bring it back at a future meeting. We just need to know if we're bringing it back in October or not. Could you add something to that?
The question for me really was, are we holding off until after the task force meets before we proceed, or are we going forward with the LDC amendments that you had previously discussed moving forward to the LDC?
Well, the most onerous of the LDC provisions that have been brought forth from the stakeholders' perspective to me has been the occupancy limit. And I'm willing to hold that in abeyance until February, till we can figure out how effective the stakeholder committee is, how effective this private-public partnership shall be, and that won't hamstring the other very important LDC provisions and comp plan provisions as we're moving forward. As Rodney and I have been bemoaning for the last year and a half, this has been a very slow process on comp plan changes, and I don't want to see it get slowed down.
Councilmember Braden.
I concur. I don't want to do anything to slow the comp plan changes down. We need to keep that ball rolling. I mean, we can go ahead and send this on to the LPA. I mean, and then it's got to come back to us ultimately for the final decision. So I don't think we need to slow that down. If we do, then we're just throwing it on out there for another month or another 2 months. So I'm not willing to change it because I don't want to slow that down. We can change it or stop it after it goes to the LPA. That's all I mean.
And I would just say that this necessarily was not considered in this agenda item, so if y'all do want to table it and hold it in advance, I would bring that up at the next council meeting and just put that at that point. I wouldn't consider that issue tonight. Y'all can discuss it now, but I wouldn't make any motions on that at this time.
Well, if we need to do it at the next meeting, then I'll do it at the next meeting, if you want to agenda it. Okay. All right, then we'll agenda that. I guess that's that issue solved for now. Let's keep going.
Councilmember Ramsworth. Did you want to add?
Well, I had a question, but I guess it's moot. If we're going to, if you've decided to go ahead and table it, okay.
So it'll be moved to the next regular meeting of the City Council. Ms. Lejeune, you're still up?
Yes, sir. As part of the approved 2018 budget, I am recommending or asking the City Council to confirm Mr. Stephen Schmidt as my Deputy City Manager. His experience, his numerous achievements, honors, all of that is listed there for your review. Working closely with Mr. Schmidt in my office for the past, 18 months now. I find him to be exactly what I need in a deputy city manager, and I'm just asking if the council will confirm this appointment.
Discussion, questions? Yep. Motion? Councilmember Dixon.
I'll be honest with you, I did not see the recommended motion or anything, but, I will say that, the city manager does have to be out a lot. I really am not crazy about the fact that it floats around like it does, although I have complete confidence in the people that have been, acting as a city manager in your absence and don't want anybody to think anything different. Mr. Schmidt has been with the city for a long time. I feel like he's done a good job. We've not always seen eye to eye on everything, but that's the way it goes. But I'll make the motion that we accept Mr. Stephen Schmidt as our Assistant City Manager.
We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Marlar?
I just wanted to make a comment. At one time, we did have a deputy city manager under Ms. Silverboard, and when Mr. Casella first came along, and for various reasons that we lost the gentleman that was there, we just eliminated the post at that time. I think it's a great idea that we bring it back because it does help in clarity, and also when Ms. Lejeune has to leave for whatever reason, we have that, as Mr. Dixon said, we'll have that continuity.
I see no further discussion. I call for the vote. Six yes, one no. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. The next item, number 4E, is the fiscal year 2018 work plans. And this ties into our strategic planning workshop that we did back in May of this year, and taking the goals and objectives that were set by the City Council. Staff has created various work plans to implement those goals and objectives. We can answer any questions that you may have regarding any of these projects for achievement, and if council has any recommended changes that they want to make, this would be the time that we would ask that you do that. And again, we can answer any questions you may have on any of these items.
Councilmember Dixon.
Yes, I'll go ahead and make the recommended motion. I move that City Council approve the organizational work objectives set forth in the strategic goals table for fiscal year 2018 for the City of Destin.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Mayor.
I have a motion. I have a second. Mr. Foreman?
I was going to make a motion, Mayor.
Okay. Any further discussion, comment? Not seeing any, I call for the vote. Unanimous yes. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. My last item is just some announcements for the general public. On October 9th, which is next Monday, so a week from this evening, at 5 p.m. here in the City Hall Annex, the City Council will hold an electric utility workshop to discuss the feasibility and potential for purchasing the Gulf Power electric distribution system for the city. On October 11th, Noriega Point Stabilization groundbreaking ceremony will happen at 9 a.m. at Noriega Point, 100 Gulf Shore Drive. On October 26th at our community center from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m., the city will have their open house for Government Week. This year's theme for open house will be Leave No Trace, which is a branding campaign for the city that we will begin this year. October 30th, we have Fall Fest at the Community Center from 5 to 9 p.m. November 10th, our city facilities will be closed in observation of Veterans Day. And then November 17th through 18th is the Holiday Craft Show at the Community Center. For more information, I would encourage everyone to go to our website, www.cityofdestin.com, or follow us on Facebook. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break before we start into the noise ordinance. If everyone will return to their seats, we'll come back to order, please.
So let's slam dunk this thing and go home.
Uh-huh. Go ahead and make the motion. Okay, well, number 5, first reading of ordinance 1719 CC, noise ordinance. Mr. Burns, by title, please.
Ordinance number 17-19-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to noise pollution control, amending Chapter 14, Article 2, Noise of the City, Code of Ordinances, providing for authority and findings of fact, providing for the creation of Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Article 2, Part 1, General Application, providing for the creation of Section 14-52, Terminology, Standards, and Definitions, providing for the creation of Section 14-53, Purpose, Intent, Authority, and Responsibility of City Manager or City Manager's designee and investigating officer, providing for the creation of Section 14-54, Measurement or Assessment of Noise, providing for the creation of Code of Ordinances, Section 14-55, Prohibited Acts, providing for the creation of Section 14-56, Exemptions, providing for the creation of Code of Ordinances, Section 14-57, Enforcement/Penalty, providing for the creation of Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Article 2, Part 2, South Harbor Mixed Use, SHMU, providing for the creation of Section 14-58, Definitions for SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-59, Prohibitions for SHMU only, providing for the creation of Code of Section 14-60, Measurement of Sound in SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-61, Classification of Use Occupancies in SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-62, Maximum Permissible Sound Levels by Use Occupancy in SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-63, Exemptions in SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-64, Special Permits in SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-65, Violations and penalties in SHMU only, providing for the creation of Section 14-66, Additional Remedies in SHMU only, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is first reading, and it's not a public hearing.
Mr. Lejeune, for an ordinance that probably doesn't need any more discussion.
No, sir.
Could you please?
And I would defer to Mr. Burns. He has been working very diligently on this one, so.
Thank you.
Basically, Councilman Dixon made a motion back on September 6th to implement the language in the proposed new noise ordinance with the exception of the South Harbor Mixed Use Zoning District, applying the existing provisions to SHMU only. And that's kind of what this does. It just takes the old noise ordinance and makes it Part 2 of the proposed ordinance and changes the terminology around on the titles just to make it consistent. And a couple other things. There at the workshop, the Destin Water Users representative did bring up a good point regarding utilities. So I did include an exemption for utilities and the various noises they make. And then there was when I was working on it, I remembered back when we were working on the Harbor and Waterways District Ordinance, we'd had some provisions in there to cut down on the noise of boats. And the former land use attorney actually pointed me in the direction of a statute that sort of limits the restrictions you can put on vessels and their noises. So I put in there some exemptions on the noises made by basically stock engines on boats. So, if someone tricks it out and puts a bunch of mufflers on it, it's really loud, that's not going to be exempt. But if it's just a boat, a regular diesel engine, it's exempt. And then the emergency signals on the boat too, those are exempt. So I did make some changes that weren't in the original version, and those are those changes.
Thank you. Councilmember Dixon.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion here. I move that the council adopt ordinance number 17-19-CC on first reading and direct staff to schedule a public hearing at the next council meeting in order for the public to take part in the second reading of ordinance 17-19-CC. And I'd like to follow that up with a comment.
Second. I have a motion. I have a second. And you have the floor.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that this is not part of the South Harbor mixed use. This is only for the areas outside of that. Thank you.
The South Harbor mixed use, though, will remain under the existing ordinance which,
Absolutely, yes, sir.
which
Clarifying the
which we know
language.
is not enforceable anyway, and the way it's to be executed.
And it will be
we
worked
don't-
on, and it will
yeah.
be worked on.
We
Just
don't-
clarifying, the language of the existing ordinance has been brought into the proposed ordinance. The old ordinance technically will be amended, so it goes away, but the language now becomes part of the new ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
I have a motion. Did I get a second? Rodney? Okay. Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, sir. I wish I had brought this up a little bit earlier. The only issue I have with the noise ordinance right now is I believe it is going to be effective at all times of day. My only concern is we might be giving a regulatory baseball bat to some of the more, I don't know, sensitive amongst our residents. I think perhaps it might be better to tailor it to when we know that we're trying to protect the residents from ridiculous noise and too much noise, by probably applying this probably after dinner at some point, 8 or 9 p.m. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's sort of my feeling on it.
If I may.
Yes, please.
My only response to that is that, you know, I saw it just recently in another state, but, you know, when we have the frat house show up there and it's at noon or 10 o'clock in the morning and we don't have a remedy for it at that time. And, you know, so I would want to make sure that, you know, disturbance of peace, no matter what time of day it is. And you know, I don't think we need to basically limit it to when people are trying to sleep. People are trying to relax, people are trying to watch their TV and they can't because of the loud noise that's coming from the house party next door. So I would not be in favor of limiting the time of day that this, because, you know, if you're bothering people no matter what time of the day it is.
I would add to that, in the service industry community, people are sleeping and awake all times of day and night. Some folks have to sleep days as it were nights, but.
I do see your point though, Mr. Destin, I do see it.
Councilmember Destin. Councilmember Marler, I'm sorry, question? Go ahead.
Oh, well, okay, well, my question is I'm assuming that the Sheriff's Department will use discretion on a case-by-case basis and pretty much figure out that it's, you know, something that, you know, like somebody's lawnmower or something like that. Captain, you want to elaborate, I guess?
Yes, sir. Discretion and a little bit of common sense. That's what I thought.
Councilman Marler.
Lawnmowers are excluded during the day anyway.
I'm sorry, Jeff, what?
I was going to point out that lawn maintenance activities between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. are exempt.
Okay.
Lawn maintenance activities of any form.
I've known some people with their headlights on at night mowing the lawn at 10 o'clock, so I've seen that happen.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, Mr.
We
Mayor.
got to get your button fixed.
Do what?
We got to get your button fixed.
My button fixed?
Yeah.
You don't pay attention to it anyway, so.
It doesn't light.
You ignore me. The question I've got, just for clarification, we're still talking about a decimal meter in the South Harbor area under certain circumstances. Is that correct?
We do not have anyone trained at the city nor a code enforcement officer to do it, but yes, it's in the ordinance.
But that would be the case?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Any further discussion? I call for the vote. Five yes, one no.
No, I've seen worse.
We have one item on the consent agenda, the resolution 1751. What's the pleasure of council?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Mayor.
I have a motion, second. Any discussion? Not seeing any, I call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. Presentations from council members. Mr. Britton, would you start us off tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, can you let us know what you found out at the meeting with the county about our funds, grant money for Heritage Park, please?
Yes, sir. It's still in process. They've not yet uploaded the grants to the grants.gov to the Treasury. They could not give me an estimated time of when that will happen, but I continually ask the question.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you staying on that. That's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Ramswell.
Thank you. I'm not really sure how to word this and how to say it or what we do, but I think it's something that bears mentioning. And that is the fact that since June, we've now had 2 teenage boys kill themselves. And from what I understand, we've had at least 6 opiate overdoses of teenagers. I know the one that killed himself last week. He was one of my junior lifeguards. I'm not sure what's going on in the area that has our students doing things like this. These are kids that have everything going for them. There were no signs. And now there's rumors that there's a group of 5 boys and been best friends for years, 3 of them, I've coached the junior lifeguards, that there's allegations and thoughts and consideration that this may not be isolated. And I don't know as a community what in particular we can do, but this is obviously something that is very real, it's very serious, and it's very traumatic. I mean, these are our children. So, you know, I really don't know what to say. I don't know what to suggest. It's just something that I felt needed to be said so that at least there's an awareness of what's going on. You know, talk to your children, talk to your grandchildren, whatever. You know, everybody says make sure they know there's someone to talk to. Well, these kids had people to talk to. So it's one of those things where you just kind of throw your hands up and what could I have done? What could anyone have done? And I know I'm rambling, and part of it's because it's hard to grasp. 2 of these young kids that live here, gone, maybe more, and more due to an opiate overdose. But, you know, I encourage all of you to think, you know, brainstorm, talk with your friends, talk with your neighbors, talk with your children. Ask them, what do they think could happen, something. Again, I have no answers. My heart breaks, and I want to do something. I just don't know what that is. So, you know, if y'all have any great suggestions, please bring them forward. Anyone up here, the school system, it doesn't matter. But I think as a community, we've got to address this somehow and come together to save our kids, because this is just unbelievable. And that's really all I have tonight.
Councilmember Dixon.
Well said. I'm so sorry for the loss that we've had recently, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilmember Foreman.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had nothing until Ms. Ramswell spoke. And I'm sorry about what's happened with these children, but the one thing that gets me right now is social media. To my knowledge, we still have laws on the books which protect the rights and of the victims and their family. And social media, within minutes of the situation, everybody knew who that child was. And I think it's very appalling that the family has to endure what they endure because of social media. You know, a little discretion in those cases would be much better deserved, because when I grew up, it was if they were under 16, you didn't mention their names. And I did notice that the television media did the right thing, but as soon as somebody said something to somebody else, social media got a hold of it, and I think it hurt the family a lot as much as it hurt to lose that member of the family. And Ms. Ramswell's right. We need to do something. What we can do is more education, I guess, and try our best to pray for those people. Thank you.
Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I've only got one brief thing to discuss. On our Harbor and Waterways Committee, I believe they are attempting to put together easements up and down Highway 98 to be from the harbor owners. CRA. Right, the CRA. I think right now a lot of it's being handled by private citizens. I would, if the council's up for it, I think it's probably more appropriate that we have someone from staff designated as a lead to make sure that that is coming together from our end rather than being handled completely, well, not completely, but majority handled by the private citizens. Because I think this is a city project. This is going to be a benefit to our CRA, and I think we need some staff lead on it to be able to make sure that it's kept moving forward.
Yes, sir. I understand, and we can get more involved in it. At the last meeting, which I attended, they did not have the full cooperation from all of the property owners. There were many questions that were unable to be answered. The FDOT representative was unable to attend. So no one was at that point willing to commit to giving the easement. So at this point in time, again, happy to take the lead, just not sure where it needs to go from this point forward, because again, it's asking the property owners if they're going to give an easement. So we can have another meeting and ask them to attend again, but I don't really, I guess what I'm asking for is, what is the expectation of staff in this process? We're happy to take the lead, but what is it exactly that you would like to see us accomplish?
I'd like to see, if the coordination is getting FDOT there, that be handled by staff. Make sure that FDOT can come. Make sure that that if we have a meeting, it won't be a waste of time. Just make sure that the ball is moving forward, because I do think it's a worthy project that will benefit the city. I just don't want it to have it completely left up to just a few of the landowners that are trying to cajole somewhat, the city and some of those other members, right, and trying to coordinate with FDOT when FDOT might say, well, what authority do you have? Why do I have to listen to you? There's more.
Yes, sir. I don't think that was the situation, though. I believe that Ms. Leemore had an excellent relationship with the FDOT representative. He didn't show up because they had an emergency situation that kept him away. If you would like me to take over that contact from Ms. Moore, then I can get with her and ask who it is that she's been communicating with and see if they want to communicate now with the city. But again, we're coming into this with not the same resources that Ms. Moore brought to the table. But if she's willing, I'll contact her. I'll get the contact and see if this FDOT representative would like to work with the city, and perhaps we can set up another meeting for the FDOT representative to be there, for the property owners to ask their questions.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Land use attorney, Ms. Coop.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Mr. Burns? The meeting will now be open to any member of the public that would like to come to the microphone and address the council. I'm not seeing any movement. Please make a sign if you want to. No? No?
Your wife is leaving.
Roxanne, you're not going to speak?
The mayor resigned. She's walking out.
Wave goodbye.
I think the meeting is adjourned.
I think the mayor's wife is leaving.